Awesome. Hello, everyone. So good to be on with y'all. I see the chat popping off. It is amazing to be here with you on a consequential Monday evening. Welcome to one of the most important conversations we could all be having right now. What do Black men want? Sponsored by the Black Economic Alliance. Listen, over the next hour, we're going to go behind the headlines, past the tweets, past the social posts, and actually get to the heart of the matter. And it is such an honor for me to be with you. My name is Joshua Dubois. I'm the CEO of Values and Gauge.ai. I'm so honored to be partnering with the Black Economic Alliance on this town hall. And we're about to get into some really important stuff. So, listen, what are we talking about here? We are talking about the fact that in roughly 8 days or less for the early voters, Black men around the United States of America will enter a polling booth or fill out a ballot and make a decision that will impact them, us, and all of our lives. The decision of who will be the next president, among other critically important decisions that they will make on those ballots. And I mean that. Listen, y'all, this isn't about politics or social media. It is quite literally about our lives. So I'm coming to you live from Upper Marlboro, Maryland. Shout out to Maryland. I see some Maryland folks in the chat. And upstairs from me right now at this very moment, hopefully on their way to bed and not to interrupt our town hall tonight, are two little Black boys, August Dubois, who's 9, and Auden, who is 4, and one beautiful little Black girl, Adelaide Dubois, who, along with my wife, Michelle, runs the entire show. And the decision that we, all of us, the folks on this chat right now, the people on this line and others, will all make in a few days will help determine their future and our future, how much I or they will pay for college in a few years, whether their cousins in Nashville and Coffee County, Tennessee will have access to health care and affordable food, whether their friends' dads will be able to start or grow a business, how the money in their 529 savings account will grow or not grow alongside the growth of the market, and perhaps even whether they have to deal with a tense traffic stop or worse if I ever got pulled over with those babies in the back seat. And that's just my story. Those consequential moments are multiplied across millions of Black men in this country who will be directly impacted by and who will directly impact the 2024 election. And so the amazing folks at the Black Economic Alliance want to unpack all of that. They want to unpack what Black men want so that together we can make informed decisions. Listen, y'all, we're so delighted that the BEA is hosting this. They are the country's leading nonpartisan group of Black business leaders, trusted business leaders focused on expanding work, wages, and wealth in the Black community. We're going to get to one of those leaders in just a moment. But real quick, do me a favor. Everybody on this line, do me a favor. We got thousands of folks who have confirmed this call and are on this line right now. But I want a few more. Do me a favor. Shoot a text to a brother who is not here. Let them know that we're here. Drop them the line, the link to this town hall. Post on social media with the hashtag What Black Men Want. And let's bring folks into this dialogue together. Here to kick us off tonight is a wonderful brother and business leader, Tony Coles, co-chair of the Black Economic Alliance and chairman of Cerevel Therapeutics. Tony, why was it important for the BEA to host this event?
Well, thank you, Joshua. And brothers, allies, and friends, thank you all for joining us tonight. We thought it was important to convene tonight's conversation because our lives, our financial future, our wellness, and our families' well-being are all literally on the line. We're hosting this because Black men can decide this election. Let me say that again. The votes of Black men can decide this election. There are decisive margins of us, of Black men, in every key battleground state that can determine the outcome of this election. And it's literally in our hands. So what we, Black men, choose to do here and in the next week, whether we go out and vote and who we vote for will decide what happens to the country on November 5th. Now, we know Black men generally turn out and support candidates who are for the Black community at the second greatest percentage rate of any race, any gender, and we Black men are second only to Black women in doing so. And we need to do that for this election. In a few days, as we cast our ballots for president and offices up and down the ticket, we have an opportunity to decisively secure the wealth, the safety, and the future of our families, something we all want to do. Not only do we want to secure the economic futures of our families, but we have the opportunity to ensure that the women in our lives, our mothers, daughters, sisters, and others, have the access to the healthcare freedoms they so richly deserve. Because if we don't take care of them, who will? We have a clear choice to make. We can either go back to a time where the government actively held Black men and our women back, or we can go forward and secure our financial futures and the rights of the beautiful Black women we love. But it's not enough to just say that. We have to dig into the real issues, understand the contrast, understand what's at stake, and have a real substantive conversation. That's what we're here to do tonight. So with that, brothers, let's get into it.
What do Black men want? It's a question that's been asked in headlines and debated from the barbershop to the halls of power. From the Obama years, when hope and progress felt within reach.
Because together we have a chance to choose a new generation of leadership in this country and start building a better and stronger and fairer and more hopeful America.
To the divisive rhetoric that followed.
You're living in poverty. Your schools are no good. You have no jobs.
Black men have been at the center of every conversation, but too often without a seat at the table. Now, as we look to the future, we're changing that.
The baseline should be everybody has a job. What we should be doing is creating incentives for people to be able to build wealth and build intergenerational wealth.
This virtual town hall is about what Black men truly want. Wellness for themselves and their families, the power and opportunity to build generational wealth, and the voice to shape the 2024 election and beyond. We're not just reacting, we're building. And today, we're taking action to ensure that we make the best, informed decisions in the upcoming general election, so that the opportunity to achieve wellness, wealth, and power becomes a reality for every Black man in America. The future isn't just coming, it's ours to create. It's now.
Wellness, wealth, and power. The future isn't coming, it's ours to create. It's now. I love that message by our hosts, the Black Economic Alliance, who've convened us today. Listen, y'all, we're going to show this a few times throughout the night. If you don't listen to anything else, I know you're going to listen to everything, but pay attention to how to actually vote. Can we pull up the vote slide? Everything you need to vote, you can find at bit.ly/vote 2024 election. You could scan that QR code and go straight there. I'm seeing some people popping off in the chat right now. Robert Duncan said he voted last Monday. Mark Kennedy said he banked that early vote. Robert Hernandez coming in from Miami. I don't know if Robert's voted yet, but I'm excited for you to get to the polls. Brothers from around the Robert Duncan, Chai Love, David Etta, and a lot of sisters who are allies, and I know have brothers in their lives that need to hear this message as well. So excited that everybody is getting their votes in. Listen, we want to go to a very special guest who has been a real key part of bringing this event together tonight. D.L. Hughley is one of the country's most informed, powerful, and persuasive, and frequently hilarious voices as well. But he's on some serious matters right now. He's a best-selling author, actor, advocate, and so much more. And he cares deeply about this election. Brother D.L., thank you for joining What Do Black Men Want?
Hey, man, thank you very, very much. I think that the title says it all. I think that what we want is for America, what is America has seemingly always promised, has certainly always promised. And I think more than a job, we want a chance, an opportunity to go as far as our talents and desires want us to, like everybody else. So I think that that's one thing, but we also want for our women to be safe and our children to be educated. We want like what everybody else wants. And I think we want to be treated as, to me, this word shouldn't be that controversial, but fair is the word that comes to mind. And I think it's so gratifying to see that instead of just underreacting or being silent, we are asking for demands with a level of specificity I've never seen before. And the other thing I've never seen before, I've never heard politicians ask what we want. You got to remember that one side has been at the top of the ticket for 10 years straight. Since 2015 till now, one guy has been at the top of a political party. Another one has been there 120 days. And I think that we can see by the turmoil and by how much conversation they're having, how important we are. So it's gratifying to see men looking at politics as a transactional endeavor as opposed to one of just passion and just, showing up. We have to make demands. They have to be specific, and we have to make sure that we have clear indicators as to whether they're being met or not.
Yeah, that's great, DL. We have to make demands. They have to be specific, and we got to hold people accountable. Now, how do you think the candidates shake out on the issues, brother? What on balance? In fact, there's a sister who asked in the chat, why are people still confused? What are the lies that people are believing?
Well, you know what? Truth. People are confused. I think because we don't all have the same levels of interest. Like, people are busy. One of the reasons people living their lives and carrying on with their days and haven't been as engaged as some people have. Some people have had a lot of misinformation to deal with, and some people are just cynical. So it's a myriad of things. But ultimately, it's not hard to see. I think the best way forward for our people is and has always been progressivism. I think that we liberals and conservative, those monikers don't really hold much weight. The best way for Black people, in my estimation, is forward, not backward. Seeing what back looks like is forward. If you look at the most conservative state in the country, I'd say Mississippi. Look how Black people live. You look at the most progressive state in the country, Minnesota, and it is a discernible difference. And I think the progressive agenda, the progressive ideas, moving us forward are things that I think are going to be the best things that are suited for our future and our children's future, in my estimation.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right, DL. And last question, man. You've spent a fair amount of time with Vice President Kamala Harris yourself, man. What's your impressions of her, man? For folks who haven't had the opportunity to spend that time, tell people about her.
Well, to be fair, and I have to say this every chance I get. I was one of the people who was spreading a lot of misinformation about her. So the first time, and I'd had conversations with her before, but the first time of the many times I got to talk to her was not a very pleasant situation. She done something I've never seen leaders do. She called a bunch of Black men out, 12 to 15 Black men who she knew weren't necessarily had favorable ideas of her. She sat with us in a room and talked and listened. And I remember it being a very, very heated conversation. It was so heated, as a matter of fact, that the Secret Service looked in, to see what was happening. I came from California. I heard the myth of her record, and I often repeated it. And the thing that I greatly lament is that I never did what she asked me to do that day, which was a fair thing to do, which is to look at her record and ascertain as if the things I've been saying were true, and they were not. And so I think I said this at the DNC, and I'll say it now. When your apology has to be allowed as your accusation. I found her to be when have you ever seen a leader ask what you want and within 120 days have and it's important to differentiate. This isn't something she came up with us. These conversations came about as a result of having conversations about economics with brothers all over the country. This is our plan. This is what we said we wanted. And I think when somebody gives you access or potentially give you access to the things you want, you have an obligation to show up. And then if whether they're doing what they ascertain whether they're doing what they have promised or not. But I have found her to be an earnest leader. That's the one thing I'd say. She was a leader. She, they say the greatest teachers are the greatest listeners, and the greatest leaders are the greatest listeners. I'd have to say that if that were the metric, I think she meets that. It was in spades.
Awesome, man. The greatest listener. That is a quality that we absolutely need as president. Brother DL, hang on for a minute. I know you're going to join the segment with Roland Martin in just a moment. Listen, we're going to get into it right now and pass it over to our brother Roland Martin. But first, I want you to know about a very special brother who's going to be joining us throughout the night. Joshua Doss is a political commentator, strategist. He's an influencer on TikTok with millions of likes on that platform. After every segment with Brother Roland, Joshua Doss is going to be they're going to do what's called a Doss back, and he's going to tell you exactly where the candidates stand on the issues that we've been talking about. Joshua Doss, thank you for joining us for this conversation, man. We're so glad to have you.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here. Happy to hop in and give that DOS back.
Awesome, man. I am so excited now to have my main man, my brother Roland Martin, who is doing amazing, disruptive, powerful things in media, join us to guide the rest of our conversation. Last night, Roland interviewed the former president of the United States, Barack Obama, and he's here with us tonight as CEO of the Black Star Network, host of Roland Martin Unfiltered. He's been doing this work for years, and we're delighted to have him. Roland, over to you, my friend.
Josh, we appreciate it. Thank you so very much to all the folks who are watching. Thank you for being with us as well. Let's get right into it. First of all, issues with the microphone here, but let's get right into it. And one of the issues that is a paramount concern in this election, finances. Finances is a tremendous issue. And money, taxes, especially for business owners, corporate taxes. Let me just go ahead and fix this microphone here so we got no further disruptions. I was doing my show, Roland Martin Unfiltered. We're still live on the Black Star Network as well. So corporate taxes, personal taxes, entrepreneurship, all of those things are significant issues on the minds of lots of brothers. You've seen Vice President Kamala Harris lay out an economic plan specifically for African Americans and brothers, but you have not seen that from Donald Trump. I think he offered this platinum plan, but he hasn't talked about it, frankly, in several months. So let's talk about money. Tony Sinkfield is a recent college graduate in Georgia. Is now working in a retail store. He has student loans. He's also trying to build a career for himself in animation. So, Tony, first of all, where'd you go to college?
Hi, I went to college at Savannah College of Art and Design.
All right, cool. So let's talk about that. When we look at the issues of of personal finances, what is it that you want to hear? What are you concerned about the most from candidates?
Put simply, I think it's important for my wage to be able to support me and ideally those close to me. All my life, I was brought up on the idea that a college education would be the key to success in the world. And I do not get me wrong, I love my education. It's gotten me so many connections as much as it's gotten me the debt that it's put me in. And I don't regret pursuing my degree, but the debt I've accrued in it and then the lack of success with finding work in this kind of incongruous job market has been kind of honestly demoralizing. Plus, all of this is before factoring in life's various expenses. With rent, for example, I'm paying for a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment, and it's incredibly high. Between bills and other necessary payments, I worry about if living within my means will soon become or soon devolve into surviving within my means. For the candidates, I mostly want to hear what they'll do to support the everyday individuals and families like myself and my own family. I want to hear their plans and their steps and what they will do and the steps that they will take in order to support the everyday citizens, be it financially, such as with reduced rent or with reduced housing costs or even loan forgiveness, or be it with increased wages or reduced educational costs, so we can sort of make good on that promise of college leading to the success story that we all hope for it to be. I would like to hear that I still have hope to purchase a home in the future. And even on a more serious note, I just want to be able to be sure that I can care for myself and my family and even care for my future.
Housing is one of the issues. And so how are you viewing that? Because that is being talked about in a lot of places this year.
So in terms of college is something that is a bit, it's tricky. You got to hope that whatever degree you are in or your degree you're going into is something that can make you living in the long run. Going into bigger fields, into anything that can hopefully get you that degree, get you that work influence or work experience that can get you a better payment is something that's really kind of important to many people. And it's tricky because I've been job searching, I've been taking the experience that I've gained, the connections that I've made. I've been trying to do those. All of these are gained through college, and then try to make a career out of it. I want to believe that college especially a college payment or a college or something that you're going to be investing so much into is something that you can then pay off, something that will then pay off in the long run. And I'm hearing lots of conversations from other brothers or other my friends and peers who are struggling to find these footholds. And I just hope that we can make that either make it a better connection or make it something we can build further in the future, or even something that we can support the individuals, make sure that whatever we're putting in is something that we are able to get back out from it.
All right, Tony, I certainly appreciate that. And so again, housing, that's an issue. And also obviously student loan debt. We know, of course, the Supreme Court made their decision in terms of that the Biden-Harris administration could not wipe out all student loan debt. But they still have been able to wipe out about $170 billion and nearly 5 million people impacted by that. So we certainly appreciate that, Tony. Folks, joining us right now is Charles Phillips. He's co-chair of the Black Economic Alliance, also co-founding managing partner of Recognize, a private equity firm focused on investing in technology services businesses, and also Kevin Matthews, founder of Building Bread, an education company that helps first-time investors enter the stock market with confidence. Kevin and Charles, glad to see both of you here. And so from your perspective, when you look at the economic plans of both of these candidates, how do you assess them? Kevin, you first.
Sure. I think for me, it comes down to who is putting more money in your pocket and who is making things easier for your wallet. When I look at Donald Trump, we know that his tariffs are going to cost Americans more than $4,000 per year. And we look at Project 2025. If you are looking to buy a home, which we were talking about earlier, he has a plan that is going to gut the Federal Housing Administration and could cost Americans an additional $1,200 per year. That is not going to help Americans. What we do know is Kamala Harris has produced a plan that could help give us $25,000 for a down payment and also add $3 million homes to the U.S. housing supply. We know based on housing supply and what we need, that is actually going to bring down the cost of housing. That is something that we need. And for the Black community, that is the biggest transfer for generational wealth. And we know we need home ownership in the Black community.
Charles, here's the reality when we talk about, people talk a lot about entrepreneurship, but the reality is this here. When you look at Black-owned businesses in this country, 95% of all Black-owned businesses do 5%, do $5 million or less in revenue. And you look at the majority of our companies, not even the majority. I mean, we're talking about 90+% have one employee. So when we talk about an economic policy, how will a president, how will an administration help Black entrepreneurs? We're talking about also we're helping folks do startups, but also how do they expand capacity? And so we have to understand the reality of Black-owned businesses in America today.
First of all, Roland, good to see you, my brother, again. And I heard my brother Tony talking earlier. I identified with what he was saying. So I've known Kamala since 2003 when I was living in San Francisco. She's been thinking about these issues for a long time. So this isn't new. She has receipts on this. So I would say on the Black-owned businesses and small businesses, she has a lot of unique programs about taking a third of government contracts, for instance, and dedicating it to small business, giving you $50,000 to do a startup business. Those are all good things, but we don't want to forget the other half of the people who work for large companies. So the plan there is employee stock ownership programs. So when you work for a large company, you don't really make a lot of money in salary. You need equity ownership. So employee stock ownership program, which is another idea she has to change the tax code to encourage companies to share their equity with their employees. Some are doing it already because it's actually smart to do. You get better employees when you do that. But that's another area she can excel in. And then secondly, I would say on the housing issue, this is going back for 30 years. We haven't been building enough housing. We've had more population growth for a lot of different reasons, permitting, costs, you name it. We couldn't build housing. And so she has a plan to build 3 million new housing by encouraging and incenting local people to change those permitting codes and actually giving them money to do that. And so it's a supply issue. I mean, we have a third of the inventory that we had in 2007 in terms of inventory of housing. This is systemic for everybody, not just Black men. And so she has been thinking about this issue. I've been talking with her about this housing issue for 2 or 3 years. So at least she has specific programs on the issues that we care about.
Well, in fact, Kevin, to Charles's point, because of the home foreclosure crisis in 2008, 2009, we actually built 8 million fewer homes between 2010 and 2019 than the previous decade. That was the fewest number of homes we built in the country since the 1940s. And last week I had the CEO of the National Housing Conference on Roland Martin Unfiltered, and he talked about really how strong her housing plan is, not just that $25,000 of assistance in helping people purchase a home, but the goal to build 3 million new units over a 4-year period. A lot of people don't quite understand the reality of housing. And the other issue that you have is you have private equity firms, Wall Street, may very well be owning upwards of 40% of all single family homes by 2030. So the housing market we're looking at today is completely different than what we've seen really in the past 30 to 40 years.
Absolutely. I don't think, again, like you mentioned, enough people don't realize that it comes down to the supply and demand factor. So when you have these private equity firms buying up the supply, then these prices rise. The median home price today is around $430,000 today. If you go back to 1990, we're talking the average home is around $130,000. It is utterly unaffordable for the average college graduate or even the average American to afford a home. The only candidate today who has a plan is Kamala Harris, period. That's it. That is it. And the average American to even afford a home today has to have a salary of about $110,000. That is not the median salary. The only way to do this is to add more homes. Donald Trump is not even looking at that. It is Kamala Harris, and that is absolutely clear. So to do that, we have to add more homes. We have to have a program to help people get into those homes. And to do that, this is how you create generational wealth. This is how you get a foothold. This is how you get college graduates to start being motivated, to start to save, to have that home, and to pass that on from generation to generation.
Charles, I talk with John Hope Bryant of Operation Hope a lot about this. We talk about, again, when you look at an economic plan, I mean, obviously you have high earners, you have middle class folks, but you also have low income working class folks. And one of the things that has greatly helped folks in that low income working class area is the earned income tax credit. And that has played a huge role. And a lot of people have not, fully tapped into that. But again, that's a part of the tax code that benefits low income Americans, including African Americans.
We should tap into that, but the bigger opportunity is to reposition people for better jobs. So Black men are over-indexed in jobs that can be automated by AI and other technologies. And so we're not investing in retraining people. We used to spend about $17 billion a year in the 1970s. Today we spend about $16 billion. In today's $17 in the dollars, if you index it for inflation, we should be spending about $60 billion. We would know how to recruit Black men to be athletes. We can recruit them to work in semiconductor factories and other jobs as well. We're not taking advantage of that talent. And it's good for the country. We're running out of workers. The country is aging. We need more workers, and we're not taking advantage of this big talent pool. So I suggest more job training programs connected with the private sector, and send companies to do that as well. All these big programs like the CHIPS Act and the Infrastructure Act, some of that should be in our neighborhoods and tapping into talent that we can participate in this new generation of industries. And right now we're stuck in these low wage jobs on average that don't get to participate in these next generation industries.
Yep.
Absolutely. And of course, when you look at college stats, a decreasing number of Black men who are going to college compared to Black women, that also contributes to exactly what you're talking about. Kevin and Charles, we certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Joshua, back to you.
Brother Roland, quick thing. There was a question in the chat that I think we need to get at real quick. I want to pull it out.
Okay.
There was a gentleman named Roland Johnson who said, we don't need handouts. He said we need to lift ourselves up and don't need handouts. Now that's something that may be in the mind of others, because I see likes on his comment. How do you, Roland or Charles or gentlemen, how do you respond to that?
So let me respond to that, and I'm gonna try not to cuss. And the reason I'm saying that is because Elon Musk is the richest person in the world. Do you know how many handouts Elon Musk has received? Oh, I'm sorry, they're called
EV subsidies.
incentives. They're called subsidies. Do we want to talk about the solar panel subsidies he got in Buffalo, New York, from the state of New York, more than $1 billion from Texas, from Nevada, from California, when it came to his batteries, things along those lines? Folks, I need everybody to understand, and I do this all the time. Every oil companies in America actually receive subsidies from the federal government. Oil companies. We can go down the list. We can go down the list. Listen, I covered City Hall. I covered county government. I can tell you about tax increment financing districts where the money stayed within that particular area. We could talk about opportunity zones. So the reality is this notion of do for self, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. Guess what? That is nonsensical. Major corporations in the United States go to the federal government, go to state governments, go to county governments, go to city governments, go to school districts to actually receive subsidies. Subsidies, when it comes to poor people, is called welfare. When it comes to major companies, it's called subsidies. Yeah. And so do understand that we need to not fall for that.
It's industrial policy. So basically, we're going to invest in some industry somewhere. The only question is, do we benefit or does somebody else benefit? You're not going to stop the industrial policy from being made, so people investing and deciding what sectors they want to grow and who gets it. We just need to participate.
I think, Kevin, you were jumping in here.
Since I wanted to add one quick thing. So as a former financial advisor, I managed over $140 million. And anytime I saw a client, we would come up with a real nice tax policy or a tax plan to help someone reduce their taxes or find a way to be very creative to maximize their wealth. When it came to them, it was a strategy. It was savvy. It was smart. But when they look like us, all of a sudden, it was a handout. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm gonna say. So anytime that we try to come up with something that helps us and is tailored to us, when it's a Black men's forum, it just suddenly looks like a handout. But when it's everybody else, when it's Donald Trump and he brags about not paying taxes, it's savvy, right? He's the smartest person in the world. When it's Elon Musk, it's very smart. It's a strategy. But when it's us, it's a handout.
Yeah. So Joshua, I want to just add this final point on here because of this here. As Kevin mentioned earlier, and I think Kevin mentioned, Charles, the tariffs. This is a fact. The tariff war when Trump was in the Oval Office cost American farmers. The federal government provided upwards of $25 billion specifically to farmers because they were impacted by the tariffs. There were farmers in Wisconsin, in Illinois, in Indiana, in Midwestern states that were filing for bankruptcy, that were going out of business because of his tariffs battle. That's a perfect example. China does not pay those tariffs. The customers here do. And the federal government, it was $25 billion in subsidies they received, and Black farmers got virtually none of that $25 billion. And when Biden-Harris came in and established a fund for Black and Hispanic farmers because of discrimination, what did Trump's top aide, Stephen Miller, do? They sued, and that money was finally freed up a few months ago. And so, again, people need to understand when you say handouts, it all depends on the person who's saying it as opposed to other folks. And so handouts, subsidies, is also called R&D. It's a whole different perspective. So do understand, even Jeff Bezos, he gets handouts. I'm sorry, they're called government space contracts. And so just understand the language being used.
No one calls the GI Bill a handout. No one calls the GI Bill a handout.
Y'all, Roland Martin for Communications Director in the Harris administration. Charles
Phillips. No. I can't do that.
Charles Phillips for Treasury Secretary, and Kevin Matthews for head of the National.
That's a big.
All right, listen,
I'm good.
Quick, we're gonna pick up the pace from here. We want to go to Joshua Doss for our first Doss back segment of the night. Joshua, what'd you think about what you just heard and what you got to say, man?
All right, let's do it. So I'm here to kind of talk about what are the actual plans from the actual candidates, right? We want to know this. Is important for us to know both of these sides as we're making these informed decisions. We talked a lot about costs. You're going to see on screen a bunch of different things, but I don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to touch on some of the things that were the most important throughout our conversation. We talked about housing, but 58% of Black people are renters. Right. So let's talk a little bit about the candidates' difference when we're talking about renters. Vice President Harris has talked about cutting red tape to make sure that we build houses more quickly, as was discussed a little bit, rental units more quickly, penalizing firms that hoard available rental properties and drive up prices for those local properties, and also outlawing new forms of price fixing by corporate landlords, right, to make sure that that rent stays low. Unfortunately, I do not have a lot about what Donald Trump has said when it comes to rent, because most times when he's asked, he kind of diverts to something about immigration or the like, and doesn't really have any strong plans about renters on his website or in his Agenda 47. But we have seen and heard from other folks at the Harvard Joint Center that immigration has not been something that has changed the cost of rent in America. So that's what we got on both candidates when it comes to rent. Joshua, back to you.
Awesome, man. So appreciate that. Listen, we're going to go straight into our next segment now that Brother Roland is going to facilitate for us. So the first one was on personal finances, and this next one is focused on small business and entrepreneurship. And so you're going to hear from Robbie Mason, Mason's Barbershop, Richard Lou Dennis, the founder and executive chair of the Sundial Group, Jay Bailey from the Russell Innovation Center for Entrepreneurs, Ryan Wilson with the best co-working spot in the country, The Gathering Spot, William Tynroad Toms, and the author and founder of REC, and then from Joshua Doss. So Roland, over to you on small business and entrepreneurship.
Certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Again, the point I earlier said, I'll start with Rich here. The point I started earlier is that we have to understand the Black business ecosystem. We saw it during COVID when it came to PPP loans. The reality is a lot of Black businesses, they had checking accounts with banks, but did not have banking relationships. So therefore, they were frozen out of the process. And so when Biden Harris came in, they made some changes to sort of add that. The second thing is that a lot of the businesses, when it came to PPP loans, they had the rules were set up to have full-time employees. Many of the Black-owned businesses, Rich, were 1099s. And so in order for us to understand, what to be asking for, we have to first understand the reality of what the Black business ecosystem actually looks like in America.
Roland, you're absolutely correct. And what we really need in this, we need the confidence of fairness, right? We need to know that when we invest our dollars, when we invest our time, we're going to have the same opportunities as other people who invest their dollars and invest their time, so that we have not a certainty of what the outcome will be, but the confidence that the outcome will be fair. So if you think about what you just talked about regarding PPP, first of all, the access to the information, the clear understanding of how you build a business and how you drive and compete in a business environment needs to be there. And we need to be able to take that and grow our businesses on, as I say, this foundation of fairness, right? So if I don't have the same access and the same opportunities, it's very difficult for me to build something that can withstand these shocks that come up in the system. So I think for me that this confidence of fairness is a very, very important place to be.
Ryan, lots of folk talk about access to capital. I look at this differently when I'm always saying access to contracts. And I'm just going to use listen, I started this show 6 years ago. I started the network 3 years ago. I have no debt. I don't owe anybody. We've been profitable. We started in September 4th, 2018. We've been profitable since March 2020. So I've made the point that, no, I don't need access to capital. I need access to contracts. In my business, the federal government spends $1 billion a year in advertising. Black-owned media gets 1% of the $1 billion. Now, under Biden-Harris, we saw a $10 billion mark hit in terms of contracts to Black-owned businesses coming from the federal government. But we need to be having that same thing, not just access to capital, but also access to contracts to be able to build capacity for Black-owned businesses. And that's contracts with the federal government, state government, local government, but also in the private sector as well.
Roland, I think that you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, nothing beats a customer, right? And so we have to keep, no matter how you're thinking about starting and continuing on with your business, we've got to put at the forefront of that conversation that we need to get you to a paying customer. At the same time, access to capital to give you a shot to have an opportunity, though, is still important. And I think that what Vice President Harris has been talking about over the last, now I think we don't remember how short of a time period this has been, but what she's been discussing in terms of making sure that more folks have access to be able to get into the game is huge. The tax exemption, too, moving from $5,000 to $50,000, that's a part of buying more time to get our businesses to a point where they'll have, again, an opportunity. At the end of the day, I think that the way that this conversation needs to develop is moving from start conversations to scale conversations. And I'm optimistic that under her leadership and given the way that we're all coming together on this topic, that we'll get there.
Robbie, I was having a conversation with a business owner. He owns a couple of restaurants in Houston. And of course, under Donald Trump, the corporate tax rate dropped. And he said, look, that put $500,000 in his pocket.
Good.
Vice President Harris has talked about increasing the corporate tax rate. And what I said to him, I said, well, our response should not be, oh my God, that's a bad idea. I said, what we should be doing as Black business owners is saying, okay, establish a cap, meaning have that increase in corporate taxes applied to businesses doing $100 million or more. I was like, whatever the number is. I said, so let's just not act like we can't do anything. Let's utilize our organizational mobilization to be able to have a conversation in this. Very much when the McDonald's operators were going and meeting with President Obama, they were talking about making some changes to a living wage. We have to understand that we can be using our voices to drive public policy as well as Black business owners, regardless of our size. All right, Robbie, you there? Go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you. Go ahead.
Oh, great. Thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be on the platform, and I'm excited about this election. Yesterday, I was excited when I went to vote early, and it was a great turnout. I'm so proud of what the Democrats are doing. We're getting united. It's so motivated. And the most important thing to me about this election is the democracy and the fact that Kamala Harris is believing in the Constitution. She respects the laws of our system compared to her opponent that has no accountability, and he just does what he wants anytime he wants. And Kamala Harris has initiatives for entrepreneurs and economic equity and raising the small Black businesses and barbershops. I'm like I said, I'm motivated, I'm excited, I'm listening to my customers, and out of say 500 men, we might have 3 Trumpers. So there it is. I mean, let's keep it going, and we just got to get this clown show over with.
Jay, I want to go to you because we talk about entrepreneurs. You are president and CEO of the Russell Innovation Center for Entrepreneurs. And part of the problem that we're facing is this idea of, well, you don't know, well, you do not have the information to work with. And over the last 3.5 years, we've seen a increase every single year in the creation of Black-owned businesses. We've actually seen the Biden-Harris folks break down contracts in terms of taking these large contracts. It was bundling under Trump. It's interesting. It happens with Republicans. They will bundle contracts, and then under Democrats, they will unbundle those contracts. The only Republican who did that was George W. Bush, who came to unbundling. That is important because if you're a Black-owned business and you're able to get a prime contract, you now can bid on other prime contract work as opposed to you always remaining a sub. That's a perfect example of how rules and regulations can be changed that will impact small businesses, especially small to growing Black-owned businesses.
So, Roland, you're right, brother. I know that we lose GDP every year because the brilliant ideas that reside on the south side of every city in America never reach the marketplaces they don't believe they belong. And I know that the only difference between that north side of the tracks and the south side of the tracks is access, opportunity, and exposure. Rich has said it. Ryan has said it. We need all three. It's no secret. It's one thing to start a business. It's a whole other thing to grow a business. And even here in Atlanta, 97, the Black Mecca, where we have more Black businesses than anywhere else, 97% of our Black businesses only have one employee. And we know the Black businesses hire Black people. They stabilize Black communities and have been the backbone of our neighborhoods forever. So if you're asking me like what do Black men want or Black businessmen want, it's literally having a fair shot at the access and the opportunity required to grow a company. And to your point, Roland, we have hundreds of years of examples of how those that we elect have the power to do exactly that. So it's incumbent upon us to use our power through the vote to make sure that we hold them accountable and we bring that access, opportunity, exposure to our communities.
William Tyrone Toms, you're the co-founder of Rec Philadelphia. And here's something that people don't understand. Under the Trump administration, they did not collect racial data. Under Biden Harris, they did. So and then under Trump Pence, they denied systemic racism. So part of the problem here is when you don't collect racial data, then you don't know what the disparities are. Under Project 2025, they want to get rid of anything that records and lays out race. That is a detriment because if you don't understand what the disparities are, you then cannot come up with creative ways to get rid of those disparities.
Yeah, Roland, I think you're exactly right. I think not knowing where the disparities are leads to us just perpetuating more of the problem. And I think a lot of the brothers that, came before me, they highlighted a part of the problem is the access to opportunity. It's access to capital. So when I think about the 50,000 creatives that I represent, that I serve, I know that most of them start off because they want to create and they want to make music and art for the creative expression, right? And then the artistic freedom. But after that, they want the financial freedom that can come with it. So when I think about us being these economic engines as Black men, especially in the creative field that are creating intellectual property, what we know is that this is an industry that is growing in a couple of years to be over $480 billion annually, right? But if we're not recognized as those economic engines, if we don't then have the access to low interest loans to be able to scale, we have a really difficult task ahead of us, right? And I know that for Black men in general and Black business owners in general, it's difficult to get these loans, especially if you just have a simple, a mainstream business that's rarely understandable. You're in real estate or you're building a plumbing company. But just imagine the magnification of the difficulty if you come to them and you're in the creative field. These institutions don't understand it, right? So then you just have an uphill battle to be able to get the capital you need to scale. So when you ask me, like, what do creatives need? What do we want as Black men? Is we want access to the same amount of capital or more capital to be able to grow our business like other folks, because we want to build wealth on our own terms. So we need to figure out how we can be able to come to the table and they understand our challenges and folks understand these innovative industries that are growing so we can have a fair shot and have the same access that our counterparts have.
Rich Dennis, final question to you. It's very interesting. I've had some folks who will say, well, she's been vice president. Why haven't we actually seen these things? But we've actually had. The problem is she hasn't been getting covered because of what I do every single day with this show, 2 hours a day. She's been meeting with Black entrepreneurs. She's been meeting and dealing with the issue of access to capital, been dealing with contracts, all these different things have been happening in conjunction with the role of Congressional Black Caucus and what they're doing. I just think what a lot of people don't understand is they don't actually see a lot of the things that are actually happening that are being done. There is a stark difference between the last almost 4 years under this administration than what I saw under Trump Pence, and even to a certain degree under Obama Biden.
Right. Well, Roland, she's been doing a lot more than just meeting, right? And to your point, that's not covered. The meetings to understand what the needs are, where the sentiments are, where people need help. Those things are very important. But let's talk about what's actually been happening. When you think about the student loan forgiveness that you talked about, how that impacts our community, how that then allows us to invest our dollars in our businesses as opposed to paying off student loans. When you talk about the support around the Fearless Fund, and when they got sued for investing money in the Black community with Black women, the level of support and engagement that came from there. Like we have to really take a step back and look at, hey, what has been different, right? And I think with what she's been doing, what the Biden administration have been doing, we've seen a market shift in how Black businesses are being approached, and we need that to continue, right? You're right. When we look at some of these other administrations, nothing deliberate has been done. I think if you look at the rate at which Black businesses have been growing, when you look at the challenges that Black businesses are having today, a lot of those are not the result of government policy, right? A lot of those are the result of just the micro and the macroeconomic environments and the shifts that we're needing to make. Having an administration and having a leader that is focused on how those shifts and how those policies impact the abilities of every citizen in this country to build a business is going to be critical to our own success. And so my point is, it's not just meeting with people, it's actual actions that have been taken already and things that we're already starting to see the benefits from.
And the actions we're talking about also happen with executive action. It's not all based upon who controls the Congress. So, gentlemen, we appreciate all of you.
Let's realize also she has a leader and she's following that leader, right? So now there's the opportunity for her to lead and for her to drive these things herself. And I think you're going to see some incredible outcomes from this.
Absolutely. And so, gentlemen, I appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Joshua, back to you.
Absolutely. Time for our DOS back real quick on small business and entrepreneurship. Joshua Doss, anything you want to share about the candidates on this one, man?
Yeah, I mean, we touched on a lot of it right there. There's actual action behind what we've been talking about, starting with the Minority Business Development Agency, an agency that's sole purpose is to assist minority businesses, right? It doesn't cost the American taxpayer much, about 11 cents per person. The Harris-Biden administration permanently secured this and it had a program, a capital readiness program that invested $120 million in nonprofits, in incubators and Black entrepreneurs, which doubled the amount of Black households with the business. That's something that happened under the Harris administration, on top of her offering an expansion, offering forgivable loans up to $20,000. We checked with the Trump team. There is not much that he has, not anything at all that he has in his plan for supporting Black entrepreneurs, but he actually is connected to the Minority Business Development Agency because he attempted to gut it twice throughout his first term. Back to you, Joshua.
Awesome, man. So do you want a gutted MBDA or do you want somebody that's going to invest in small businesses? Roll it up next for a real quick segment, but an important one is what do Black men want when it comes to their mental health with Dr. Jay Barnett, author and mental health expert, the founder of the Just Heal Bro Tour. Over to you, Roland.
Yeah, Jay, I think too many people focus on, when they talk about Black men, it's always money, 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 money. And when I talked to Vice President Kamala Harris, when we were in Greenville, she talked about caring about the whole of the Black man, not just his pocketbooks, but also his physical and mental health as well. And the reality is, when you look at the Affordable Care Act, you look at the expansion of that for African Americans. Now you're talking about the ability to deal with brothers and sisters when it comes to their physical and mental health.
Hey, Roland, how you doing, man? So excited about this opportunity. I think as I was watching earlier, I think it's critical that we understand, as you're talking about, understanding the disparities and understanding our relationship with the healthcare system. And I think it's important to understand that if you're going to treat Black people, we have to be able to understand the contextualized background historically when it comes to the healthcare system. And as providers, oftentimes Black men have been misdiagnosed. Black men have not been treated properly. And you can take this all the way back to the school system for Black boys. Often Black boys are criminalized when they have issues in the classroom. And often I like to say that those issues are clinical. And so I think if you're going to push the needle forward when it comes to Black men showing up in spaces, Black men being able to be the best that they can be in the world, we have to consider them holistically. And we also have to consider how we're providing care for them and being able to fund community initiatives that are trusted messengers. And I think oftentimes we're trying to push Black men and Blacks all together into these whitewashed spaces and into these agencies that has no research on how to treat Black people, because mental health was not for Blacks. And if you study historically, often their methods and even some of their strategies don't have any understanding of how to treat us when it comes to mental health.
And of course, we talk about mental health. That's also financial strain and stress, things along those lines. So when you think about capping the cost of insulin, when you think about capping medical expenses, listen, when you don't have that level of stress, worrying about your grandmother or mothers and fathers, that has an impact on your mental wealth, your physical well-being as well, what's happening with financially. And so we have to look at those particular policies, how candidates are speaking about mental and physical health. And so, Joshua, in our DOS-back segment, what does it show in terms of both candidates on this issue?
Over to the DOS-back, because Joshua Doss has some great information for us here. Thank you, Roland.
Yeah, I'm a pollster. I sit in focus groups with Black men and Black women all the time. You talk to Black women, the number one thing that they want for their Black men is mental health, access to mental health. We see that Black people are 20% of Medicaid recipients, and Trump's attempts to slash some of those what is given to Black men during Medicaid from Medicaid would cause more barriers to getting the mental health that Black men need. On the other side, we see Vice President Harris, if you saw the Black Male Agenda, wants to launch the National Health Equity Initiative that focuses on Black men. And it really leans in on focusing on Black men's access to mental health, among other things.
Yeah. That's awesome, Joshua. Thank you, brother. Thank you, Dr. Jay Barnett. Y'all need to get up on the Just Heal Bro tour and all that Dr. Jay is doing. He's doing amazing work helping brothers heal. Please follow him on Instagram and all other platforms. Roland, the next one is a powerful one. It's an important one. What do Black men want when it comes to political and economic power? With Derek Johnson, my main man and the president and CEO of the NAACP, Reverend Michael Blake, President Obama's former head of African American Outreach, CEO, founder of Atlas Strategy Group, and former Assemblyman Ron Busby Sr., CEO of the U.S. Black Chambers of Commerce Incorporated. And I see Brother D.L. Hughley is still hanging on the line, so not to put him on the spot, but maybe he wants to join this conversation too, Roland. So we'll throw it over to those gentlemen and to you as well.
I was talking to then Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. Of a few years ago when he was in Congress, and there were a group of young people who came to him and they said, man, if you don't do what we tell you to do, we're going to vote you out. He says, I don't give a damn what none of y'all think. He said, you see that building right there? He said, all those folks, he said, and they walkers in their scooters, they vote, you don't. And what he was trying to explain is that the people who show up, that's who politicians listen to. So when we look at Louisiana, a significant number of African Americans, more than 900,000, but barely 2 out of 10 have voted early. When we look at Milwaukee, a perfect example, 50,000 fewer people voted in 2022 than 2020. Had they voted in 2022, Mandela Barnes, Lieutenant Governor, her brother, would be the United States Senator as opposed to MAGA Ron Johnson. And so when we talk about why we must maximize our vote, it's not that Black men are not voting, but it's maximizing our vote, then we can leverage that power. And so, Derek, I'll start with you. Former Ambassador Andrew Young, he talks about it all the time. And I've been saying the same thing to Detroit and other places. If our target is 70% of eligible African Americans voting, we could sweep elections nationwide, but it can't happen when we're voting at 30, 35, 38, 40% capacity.
Well, that is a big problem. That's also due to lack of investment in the Black political infrastructure. We began to see the erosion of the Black political infrastructure in the early 2000s. For that NAACP, we are working hard to address that. This election cycle alone, we're spending over $20 million. We're putting $6 million into local groups. And some of them are not even NAACP units because we have to rebuild the Black infrastructure. Louisiana's a problem. We've heard it time and time again, but for some reason, there has been no investment in that state. There's been the lack of investment across the country. And so when we leave this election after we're successful, we need to focus on how do we rebuild, replenish, and strengthen that infrastructure.
You know, Michael Blake, you're founder of Atlas Strategy Group. And one of the things that we did with the Win with Black Men call in July, when we raised $1.5 million, we kept a third of that. And we specifically said we were going to invest in Black male organizations that were on the ground. And I think that's one of the things that we have to understand, that if we're talking about how do we maximize Black men political power to get economic power, that means that we also are investing in our own organizations and not waiting for somebody else to cut a check. Your thoughts?
It's necessary. You know, when we think about what is not happening too often, it is an insufficient support around the infrastructure, as Derek was just talking through. And so, you know, we always highlight the responsibility of the long-term game. When you are not putting in the resources when it comes to training, then it makes it harder to find the right staffers. You're struggling to find the right staffers, you're struggling to find the right campaign managers, struggling to do that, then it makes it harder for the candidates themselves. And so what we are doing throughout our whole effort around the Kairos Democracy Project is making sure that we're thinking through the short and the long game. The efforts around this is critical. You know, I always go back to a stat that resonates with me. 206 counties voted for Barack Obama twice and then voted for Donald Trump. And so that happens because we didn't sustain the infrastructure from election to election. And so what we did earlier this year through our collective efforts with the collective, with Win with Black Men, with Kairos Democracy Project, with you, Roland, with Bakari Sellers and others, it said very clearly, we're not going to hope that Black men organizations get supported. We're going to make it happen, because too often we're waiting for support and resources. We're seeing that happening across the country right now. Too often funding is only going towards paid media. It's not going towards crisis communication and canvassing and calls and voter protection. And what we are doing right now is necessary to make that all happen from there.
You know, Ron Busby, when we talk about, again, how this is all about maximizing political power. The reality is, on the Democratic side, Black women are the #1 group that votes for Democrats. Black men are #2. And when we make decisions to sit elections out, whether we're talking school board election, mayoral election, city council, state rep, county commissioners, DA, judicial races, governor races, and congressional, what that means is it is the equivalent of literally having a television, a nice big screen television in your living room, but it ain't plugged up. You can't watch it unless you have power. You have to actually plug into that power, and voting power is the start of that. Now, after the election, it's a different process, but we've got to make sure we're maximizing our vote.
You know, Roland, I'm from Oakland, California, and I remember when I first moved here, I read the license plate, and it really shocked me of Washington, D.C. It literally reads taxation without representation. So equally as important as voting for a president, we've got to have down ballot candidates as well as people that are at the table that are representing our best interests. So often here in Washington, D.C., when policies are being created, they're created under the auspices of minority programs. Roland, we're not minorities. We are Black business owners, Black fathers, Black men. And when you look at the pie, the $640 billion that America spends every year, only 1.5% of that goes towards Black firms. 94 cents of every dollar that this country spends goes to either white men or white women. But when you have people at the table that are allowing policies to be able to be created that don't represent Black men as well as Black communities, we are always going to be having these types of conversations of saying, well, it never matters if I vote or not, or I can sit this one out. I have this 78-inch TV, I'm fine, even if I can't turn it on. What we've got to do is make sure that we elect her, that we make sure that we have policies that are going to be intentional, that are going to be transparent, and that we have accountability. And that's what the U.S. Black Chamber, as well as many of the organizations that are on tonight, are here to discuss. How do we make sure that Black policies are being created, implemented, and making sure if we can go from 1.5% spend to 3% spend, that's an additional $10 billion of opportunity for Black-owned businesses. That's what the U.S. Black Chambers is making sure that is going to happen during the next 4 years.
Yeah.
Hey, DL, I had a
Yeah.
brother who was on my Instagram, and he said, I'm not voting. It was two things. He says, I'm not voting until we change electoral college. And I said, bruh, let me help you out. I said, the electoral college is a constitutional amendment, which means that Congress has to pass it. The president has to sign it. Then it must be ratified by state legislatures. I said, so if you don't vote, then you can't impact who votes to change electoral college. I said, so it ain't just gonna happen because you sit on the couch. Again, that it's getting folks to understand how to maximize your power to achieve political change that then impacts economic, health, and so many other areas.
It's everything. But I will say this. It's a couple of things I got to get back to. One, when the brother said we don't want a handout, well, then ask a football owner who builds those stadiums his teams play.
Boom.
Ask him how that happens.
Boom.
And the other thing is when the young brother was talking about a jobs program and what. The one thing I'll say, Trump does have a jobs program. He plans to eradicate the Department of Education, so we're not educated. He plans to kick out large numbers of immigrants and then give us those what he called black jobs. That is literally his plan. That's so. And the other thing, when we're talking about the consolidation of political power, the three starkest examples I can give you. One of the reasons that Kamala Harris is the nominee, and if we didn't have a fractious, event going on to see who the nominee would be, because they knew that black women were so powerful, they didn't risk angering them. That's a clear. She is the nominee right now because they wouldn't dare do something that messed with the golden goose. They wouldn't do it. The other thing is they have a Supreme Court justice because they demanded one. A black Supreme Court justice. Black men do not have anybody that sits in the Supreme Court that is reflective of our ideas and values. Maybe our skin color, but not our ideas, experiences, and values. And the other thing is, Brittany Griner got out of jail before a spy and a Marine. She got out of jail because black women said she should. Those are examples of power. Just it's the consistency that they've shown. It is the specific acts that they've had, and their idea to navigate and wield political power in a way that benefits them. Like there's a reason that they got a lot of black judges. There's a reason that a lot of they were their power. They made sure that everybody understood what it was, and they weren't afraid to use it.
You know, I had to remind some folk, Derek, that I had a group of brothers and they were saying, man, a folk not listening to us, this, that, and the other. I said, well, let me tell you what happened in 2016. 2016, after the election, a group of sisters got together and wrote a letter to the head of the DNC, says, y'all ain't paying attention. Got a meeting, made some changes. And again, that doesn't happen if we don't organize and mobilize. And so what has to happen if folk want change, if they want change, it literally means mobilizing and organizing and not just sort of thinking that a singular individual can do it. That also means having an agenda that is consistent, that's not a one-time thing. And so what I keep telling people is that the election is the end of one process. Yes, you must vote. When the election is over, then you must be pushing and pressing folk on the local, state, and national level to do what they said they were going to do. And even if your candidate lost, you are still a constituent.
But the problem that we have seen, people run to the front of the room to get the microphone, and no one is focusing on how do we get the work done, develop the agenda, and implement a plan over time. We wouldn't be here but for a group of individuals who challenged a system and went to New Jersey in 1964 and forced the conversation to come back in 1968 to develop the opportunity, which opened the door for the 70s Black elected officials across cities across America to get elected, leading to Harold Washington, which opened the door for Jesse Jackson in 84 to perfect the system in 88 by Representative delegates, which led to Obama, which opened the door to where we are today. That's a systematic plan that had been implemented over decades by individuals who didn't run to get the microphone, but did the work. And some of those sisters you're talking about in 2016 was trained by Jesse Jackson in 84 and 88 that realized that the rules is the most important part of this process, that political parties are vehicles for agendas. And if you control the rules and understand the agendas, you get the outcome that you work for.
But Mike, I do want to do this here. Derek brought up 1964. Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, Fan Lou Hamer, Bob Moses, they were ticked off that they did not get all that they desired in 64.